Once again, good evening, everybody. My name is Tricia Shimamura, and I am the Director of Community Affairs for the Manhattan Borough President's Office. I hope that you're here tonight to learn more about our EEO policy and how it may apply to you if you serve on a community board or another public service position that you are appointed to. If not, then you're in the wrong place. So I just want to say first and foremost, thank you to Porfirio, to Dawn, to Eric from my team, everybody else who from the community affairs unit who has put a lot of thought and energy into creating a really thoughtful series of trainings for our community board members and for others who are just interested in becoming more civically involved. The whole idea of this series came from a charter mandated responsibility that the borough presidents have that says that we should be creating opportunities to provide support and technical support and assistance to community boards. We take this responsibility to heart and really wanted to create something that not just would serve community board members, but also the broader public of Manhattan residents who are interested again in getting a little bit more involved in serving their communities. So that's how we decided to create a series of events. This is our, I believe, fourth training of many that are going on this week. And I really hope that you would find some time to log in with us again, or even better, would love to see you come out in person this Friday, November 17th at 12 o'clock, where we're going to be at John Jay College doing an emergency preparedness training with the New York State Department of Emergency Management. If you sign up and RSVP beforehand, not only is it a great training, but you also get a fully stocked go bag, like a backpack full of a first aid kit and a bunch of flashlight and a bunch of other supplies that you may need in a natural disaster. I certainly used mine that I received about 5 years ago, and I'm super excited about having this training again coming to us on November 17th. So I see Porfirio put some of the contact information for that event. You do have to register beforehand into the chat. Tonight, though, we are talking about EEO. It's one of the 3 required trainings that we ask all community board members take. If you're not on a community board and are still interested in it, I'm thrilled that you're here because it is something that is really important to us. It's why we've asked you all, community board members, to take this every year. It's important. It's important for us to make sure that we're doing everything we can from the borough president's office to ensure that people are in spaces that are free from discrimination, particularly for any sort of discrimination against a certain class or community that you are identify with. I'm sure our EEO officers are going to talk more about this evening. If you have any questions, though, and many times questions are raised in this where you're starting to think about an interaction that you had, or maybe how it might apply to another organization that you're a part of, that's good. We hope that these conversations raise questions. And I just want to make sure that Porfirio, Xavier, and Maite all put their contact information into the chat so that you all have that and you can walk away with that information. Once again, I'm just going to say all these trainings are meant to be pretty digestible. I can guarantee you that I'm going to push for a hard stop at 6:30 just because we know that you've got many other board members or board responsibilities. Many of you have committees tonight that you're going to. We understand you have busy lives. If you have a question and think that there's time for our officers to answer them, go ahead and put your question in the Q&A button, which is on the lower part of your screen. Go ahead and put your question, type your question up and put it in there. At the end of the presentation, I believe that they'll be answering questions that are submitted through that function. And then finally, I just want to say that that you may be, that we understand that life happens. We understand that if you get called away, if you have a sick child, if something happens where all of a sudden you can't stay for the whole training, we get it. That's why if you see on the top left-hand corner of your screen, we are recording this, and we'll be sure to be posting all of these recordings on our YouTube page after this series and week of trainings is over. You do, however, get credit for being here this evening. And Eric, I just want to remind you, my deputy, to make sure that you're getting a list down of all of those who are here for tonight's training. because this is one of the 3 kind of required trainings that we ask of all community board members, we want to make sure that you get the credit for being here and participating, and we really appreciate it. Again, I know how busy you all are. I get it. I loved serving on my own community board for several years, so we really appreciate you taking the extra time and spending a little extra time with us. So with that, I again just want to say thank you. Thank you for you all being here today. Thank you to Maite and to Xavier for leading tonight's discussion. You can clearly probably see that I'm getting over a bit of laryngitis, so I'm going to say goodbye to you now formally, although I'll be listening in. And Porfirio and Eric, I'll let you guys kick us off and then close up when we're getting close to 6:30. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Tricia. Um, if you'll allow me to take a moment to introduce Xavier and Maite. Xavier Medina is Constituent Services Liaison for the Manhattan Borough President's Office, as well as our Principal EEO Officer. His experience is heavily social-based work, with several years of experience in assisting refugees and asylum seekers. Maite Carino is the Capital Project and Budget Analyst for the Manhattan Borough President's Office, as well as the Deputy EEO Officer for the office. Her career background includes the United Nations, public service at a federal, state, and local level, and she received her master's from NYU in Global Affairs, International Relations, concentrating in the transnational security and negotiations and conflict resolution. We are thrilled to have them both here today. And Xavier and Maite, I will turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you guys for joining today. So we'll be going over the EEO policies for our office, and that applies to all of our community boards. It's a fairly detailed presentation. We're not expecting you to leave this presentation with all of these details memorized whatsoever. There are just a couple of main points that we want everyone to go home with. I'm going to emphasize this now, as well as at the end of our presentation, that like I said, we don't want you to leave with everything memorized, but we are here as resources. So if you have any questions at any point in time, feel free to reach out to either myself or Maite for clarification on anything. If you have any questions about anything, if you don't know whether something is EEO related or not, we are here as a resource for you. So with that being said, let's jump right into the presentation. If you have questions, feel free to please save them for the end, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Bear with me for one moment. Perfect. All right. And can someone confirm with me that you guys can see my screen okay?
Looks
Yes, we
fine.
can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, let's begin. All right, so some of our training objectives for today. So we're going to define diversity and inclusion. We're going to provide everyone with knowledge of their rights provided by federal, state, and city human rights laws. We're going to familiarize ourselves with our EEO policy, reasonable accommodation process, as well as the complaints procedure. And then we want to identify some of the behaviors that could violate our EEO policy, human rights law, and sexual harassment prevention policies. And then, of course, you guys are going to have the contacts of all of the relevant personnel for these matters. So how do we define everyone? So you'll see that throughout this presentation, we're going to be we're going to be using the term everyone quite frequently. What does everyone mean? No two people are the same. Diversity is the inclusion of people who are different. The power of diversity is that we can use multiple opinions, cultures, and backgrounds to drive our best work. So when we say everyone, that truly is everyone. That is all employees, all volunteers, all interns. This policy it applies to truly everyone. In the business case, cultures that ignore diversity and inclusion invite lower productivity, higher absenteeism, and higher turnover, resulting in higher cost. A diverse and inclusive organization receives increased productivity, reduced turnover, sustainable leadership, and a brand and legacy of relevance to the communities it serves. So regardless of the items that you see listed on the right, whether it's your age, your language that you speak, your family status, gender, or your veteran status, you are included in the term everyone. So when we talk about EEO and the progression of EEO, you'll see that it's an ongoing process on a national level, on a state level, as well as a local level. So you'll see on the bottom in 1964, the Eliminate Discrimination began through legislation. Then through 1971, affirmative action began on getting people in some of those excluded classes or excluded identities. In the 1980s, we wanted to now work on getting the people that we moved in, on moving them up and diversifying management. And now today, through diversity and inclusion, we want to unleash that potential to the max. So it's an ongoing process with EEO. The conversation is continuously evolving. And the conversations that we're having now are very different from the conversations that we are having back 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and will be very different from the conversations that will be had in the future. All right, so what is equal employment opportunity? Equal opportunity exists when decisions, practices, and procedures relating to the workplace are made in a way that gives everyone a chance to succeed. EEO law prohibits an employer from discriminating against persons in all aspects of employment, including recruitment, selection, evaluation, promotion, training, compensation, retention, and working conditions because of their protected status. So, at its core, what we strive to do is create a level playing field for all of those in the workplace. We want to ensure that no one has an unfair advantage because of a particular identity they have. We also want to ensure that no one has a disadvantage because of an identity they have. Bear with me for one moment. Um, yes. So with that being said, we want to ensure that no one is creating unfair environments in the workplace. So discrimination, what is discrimination? Discrimination is the unfavorable or unfair treatment of a person or class of persons in comparison to others who are not members of a protected class. So, unfair treatment is not necessarily unlawful discrimination. Treating a person unfavorably in comparison to others may violate civil rights law only when the person's protected status is a factor in that treatment. So, what that means is that just because you're being treated unfairly, by a supervisor, for example, doesn't necessarily mean it's an EEO matter. It only becomes an EEO matter when that unfair behavior is a result of one of your protected classes. And we'll talk a little later about what a protected class is. So you could be being treated unfair maybe because a coworker doesn't like the shoes that you're wearing one day. That is not an EEO complaint. An EEO complaint or an EEO violation would be if you're being treated different because of your race, because of your sexual orientation, your religion, the gender you speak, etc. Harassment. So the use of vulgar language, abusive acts or language, hostility, physical aggression, intimidation, those are examples of harassment. And this also includes sexual harassment, which is related to a person's protected classes as well. And then we have retaliation. Behaviors that may be considered retaliatory include, but are not limited to threats, reprimands, negative evaluations, harassment, refusal to hire, denial of promotion or job benefits, demotion, suspension, discharge, negative references to prospect employers, or other actions affecting the terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. So the federal anti-discrimination laws and protections. So these are some of the examples of protected classes that are listed on a federal level. This includes race and color, genetic info, military status, pregnancy, religion, disability, citizenship. What you'll see is that between the federal laws, state laws, and local laws, the collection of protected classes expands. We're not expecting you to remember your which law is protecting the class or your identity that is being discriminated against or in question. What we want you to understand is have a general idea of is what are these classes that are mentioned. So bear with me for one moment. I'm going to add a brief pause to our presentation.
Just bear with us while we resolve this small technical issue. Thank you.
Okay, forgive me. We can get back into the presentation. All right. Are you guys
Thank
able to
you.
see the presentation on where we left off?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay. So the New York State Human Rights Law, so New York State anti-discrimination protections are contained in Section 296 of New York State Executive Law and referred to as the New York State Human Rights Law. New York State Labor Law section, nursing mothers have a right to express milk in a private place for up to 3 years following the birth of a child. So again, these are some of the laws, the collection of laws on different levels of government that protect you in the workplace. It's unnecessary for you to remember which law is protecting which or which law gives you which specific right to do a particular thing in the workplace. But we want you to have that general idea of what your protections are. And at any point, if you're unsure, again, please feel free to reach out to your EEO officers. All right, so New York State human rights law provide all of the protections provided by the federal law, in addition to other identities such as arrest and conviction, sexual orientation, and victims of domestic violence. New York City's human rights law contains all of protections provided by federal and state laws and the following, such as partnership status, unemployment status, caregiver status, and consumer credit history. The New York City EEO policy prohibits discriminatory actions against and treatment of city employees and applicants for employment on the basis of actual or perceived identities. So, what this means, and this is really important for everyone to grasp, is that your actual identities in the context of EEO are not necessarily relevant. What's important is how others are perceiving you and if they're treating you differently based off of that perceived identity. So, if someone, for example, is treating another coworker poorly or worse than their other coworkers because they perceive their sexual orientation to be gay, for example, whether or not they actually are, that is an EEO violation. So the burden really falls on the person who's doing the actions rather than the identity of those that are being impacted by those actions. So the NBPO Manhattan Borough President's Office EEO policy requires that all employees be trained in the requirements of the EEO policy. Thank you guys for coming today, and treat their coworkers and members of the public respectfully, and to be sensitive to the effects of their behavior on those around them. So, who is covered by the city's EEO policy? Everyone who works within New York City government or its workplaces and job applicants. And yes, this includes CB members and staff. This also includes interns and volunteers. Types of conduct that could violate the city's EEO policy. Decisions, actions, or practices based on an individual's actual or perceived status that unlawfully affect the term or conditions of their employment or potential employment within the city of New York. This policy also prohibits city employees from aiding, abetting, inciting, compelling, or coercing any person present in a city facility, whether or not an employee of the city, from engaging in conduct prohibited by the EEO policy, including conduct that creates a hostile work environment based on any protected basis. Um, so what this means is that if you are pressuring someone else to treat another person differently based off of their protected identities, then that is a EEO policy violation. Treating someone differently because of their identities by proxy of someone else doesn't absolve you of violating that policy. And this also applies to when you are not in the office. So this could apply to field locations. This could apply to offsite city social functions, city vehicles, facilities where city government is being conducted and discussed. So anytime you are discussing city work, anytime you're on the clock discussing matters, um, it doesn't matter where you are physically, that EEO policy does apply. Managers and supervisors' responsibility. The city's EEO policy requires that managers and supervisors make every effort to maintain a work environment that fosters sensitivity and respect for the diversity of all individuals in the workplace. Managers and supervisors must be aware of risk factors and take appropriate steps to prevent sexual harassment. Responsibilities include cooperating with EEO officers, receive training in EEO laws, encourage subordinates to consult with EEO office, maintain confidentiality with respect to EEO matters, perform managerial supervisory responsibilities in a non-discriminatory manner. So EEO, supervisors really should be cooperating with their EEO officers, and this could mean sitting to have an interview or conversation with the EEO officers that have an ongoing investigation. Supervisors should also ensure that they are doing their due diligence to mitigate any instances of discrimination in the workplace, and they should be doing their best to create a safe working environment for everyone. The city and its agencies may discipline conduct that violates the city's EEO policy, even if the conduct does not violate a law prohibiting discrimination. So just what that means is that just because your action didn't necessarily break any laws, it could still very well break our EEO policy, and the office can still conduct disciplinary action for that. Actions directed at a particular person or group or behavior directed at one's own group may violate this policy. The policy not only protects individuals from prohibited conduct because of their own protected status, but also protects individuals from conduct motivated by the actual or perceived status of those with whom they are associated. Sexual harassment. All right, so we're going to pass it on to our deputy EEO officer, Maite, and she is going to take it on from here. Maite, just let me know when you are ready for me to switch the slides, okay?
Everyone, I'm sorry. So I apologize for the background noise. Give me 1 second, please. I'm so sorry.
Here, I'll continue going, and then you can just let me know when you're ready, Maite. All right. So sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a form of discrimination prohibited by law. Federal guidelines describe sexual harassment as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical contact. Sexual harassment may involve individuals of the same or different gender. A broad range of behavior may be considered sexual harassment. Maite, are you ready? Perfect. I'll let you take it on from here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Xavier. So the next slide would be quid pro this for that. Submission to or rejection of the conduct is the basis of either continued employment or for decisions affecting pay, benefits, or advanced opportunities. Meaning, for example, if let's say I'm a manager and I do any, I'm so sorry, I do any uncomfortable advances towards an employee or someone who's trying to apply for a job position, and you feel uncomfortable and you feel like they're trying to take advantage, that because of their higher power and their decision to either hire you or their decision to either fire you if you don't accept their um if you don't accept their, I guess, their sexual advances. So for example, I can say, I want you to join my team only if you do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't do that, then I won't hire you. Or if you are an employee, if you don't do that, I will fire you, et cetera, et cetera. I'm so sorry about the background with everyone. I do apologize. All right, hostile work environment. So the conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance. So we want to make sure that wherever you work, you feel comfortable enough to say whatever you want, act the way you are. But when exchanging ideas or performing your job or duty, and you're trying to go on about your day, and for example, you feel like someone has made sexual advances towards you, and you've been trying to ignore them, or you've been trying to put a stop to it, and you feel like whoever made the sexual advances toward you is using that to retaliate against you, to make it such an uncomfortable environment for you to work in, hostile, intimidating. That's something that we want to make sure that doesn't happen in the office. You want to make sure that you wherever you are, you feel in safe space. Okay, other forms of harassment. So the city's EEO policy prohibits any harassment based on an individual's gender or any other protected characteristics such as race, color, religion, national origin, age, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, etc. For harassment to be considered unlawful, it must be all of the following. So it must be related to a protected class, it must be unwelcomed, it must be offensive to a reasonable person in the recipient's position. When a person is treated less well than other employees based on a protected category, and the conduct is not a petty slight or trivial inconvenience. Reasonable accommodations. So city agencies may be required to provide a reasonable accommodation when requests are made in connection with disability, religion, victims of domestic violence, sex offenses, or stalking or pregnancy. So a reasonable accommodation is a change or an adjustment to a job position or environment that enables a qualified applicant or employee to perform its tasks. So for example, as we'll see in the next slides, reasonable accommodation for religion and disability. So there's certain religions that have certain practices that at a certain time they must perform certain religious practices, or they must take a day off because it's a special religious observant day. They're entitled to do so. An example for disability, someone needs accommodation for the ADA ramp, something that would help them if they need to be on if they're bound to a wheelchair. Then we will make sure to accommodate them, that wherever job position they have, it gives them their free will to move around and have their range based on their disability. So under here, for example, we have a reasonable accommodation for religion is a change in a workplace rule or practice that allows a person to respect their religious beliefs. A reasonable accommodation for disability, is a change or adjustment to a job or work environment that enables a qualified applicant employee with disability to participate in the job application process, perform the essential functions of a job, and enjoy the benefits and privileges of employment equal of those to enjoyed by the rest of the team. So like I had said previously, for example, examples on the religion is flexible arrival departure time, leave of voluntary swaps of shifts or assignments, time and places to pray, accommodations relating to appearances and dress code. For disability would be flexible arrival and departure time as well, leave of voluntary swaps of shifts or assignments, ability to work from home, ergonomic workstations, and accessibility communications. Another example that we have would be the victims of domestic violence and for pregnancy. So victims of domestic violence usually are victims when it comes to stalking, physical assault. So people that endure situations like that are often fearful of their environment, right? And when it comes to women with pregnancy, effective January 2014, a new amendment of the New York City Human Rights Law requires employers to provide written notice to their employee regarding the right to be free from discrimination in relation to pregnancy, childbirth, and a related medical condition. So for people that fall under these windows of reasonable accommodation, for victims of domestic violence, it would be, like I said previously before, flexible arrival and departure times, changing the victim's workstation, assisting in developing a safety plan, changing the victim's work phone number, removing the victim's name from the agency's phone directory. So our main concern would be providing for your safety overall. And for pregnant women, would be bathroom breaks to facilitate increased water intake, periodic rest if you stand for long periods of time, assistance with manual labor, changes to your work environment. So requesting a reasonable accommodation, an employee may consult with a supervisor, a manager, the agency EEO officer, disability rights coordinator, or an agency EEO representative. So you have a wide variety of options to filing to complaints. So it's really up to you, to whoever you feel comfortable with. So when filing a complaint, anyone can file a complaint. An employee or even an applicant for the employment can file a complaint. And you can consult it with the agency EEO officer or EEO representative, a manager, or a supervisor. So when filing a complaint, complaints can be filed against a manager, a supervisor, a coworker, or an independent contractor consulted or vendor. Complaints must be made within 1 year of the incident, so that's the statute of limitations. You can also file a complaint. Although this is very key. I'm so sorry, everyone. I do apologize. One of the key things that I do want to make sure that everyone understands is that you can file a complaint anonymously by calling or writing to the EEO officer or EEO representative. If you request your identity to be concealed, the EEO professional will investigating the complaint will attempt to not reveal it. So we'll try our best to make sure we try to help you the best way we can by not revealing information, because that's something that's key to us, especially if it's a hostile work environment, if there's a lot of intimidation going on. We'll try our best to, protect you. So I just also want to highlight that it doesn't have to be only at our office if you want to file a complaint. You also have a variety of agencies. For example, the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC, United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the United States Department of Labor, the New York State Division of Human Rights, and New York City's own Commission of Human Rights. And it's very important to understand that all complaints, investigation requests for reasonable accommodations and records will be handled to the greatest extent possible in a manner that would protect the privacy interests of those involved. And here you have the information of your EEO officers here at the Manhattan Borough President's Office. Like I said, our principal EEO officer, Xavier Medina, our disability rights coordinator, Kimberly James, the deputy EEO officer, myself, Maite Cariño, our personal officer, Deidre Lyles, and our 558 coordinator, Deidre Lyles. And we want to thank you for attending our EEO sexual harassment presentation. And on my behalf, I do apologize for the child. Couldn't find a sitter, but thank you so much for being so understanding, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Maite. Thank you very much, Xavier, for the presentation. We really do appreciate it. If you don't mind, I do see one question in the chat so far, and I do want to remind folks who are attending, if you do have any questions, please feel free to do so in the Q&A or the chat. Whoever would prefer, I see Xavier would prefer to answer this question. Just reading it out for everyone. The question is gossip of one employee about another considered harassment?
Yeah, so it could be considered harassment, but for it to be an EEO matter, it would have to relate to one of your protected classes, protected identities. So it would have to be about your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your religion, things along that line. That's when it would become an EEO matter. If it's outside of that matter, then this is something you wouldn't go through the EEO avenue. You would be directed towards your general HR staff, and they would take it from there. Are there any other questions? Feel free to take your time to put any additional questions in the Q&A chat, or you can unmute yourself if possible to ask us questions.
And also, if, for example, you don't have any questions now, or maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing now, you can also always reach to us individually. We're always available. And also, if you ever feel that you do encounter a situation as such, but you're not sure, or maybe you're second doubting yourself, or you wouldn't be 100% sure, understandable of if that's actually a sexual behavior that you feel uncomfortable with, you can always still reach out to us. Even if you feel like there's a thought of it, we're still welcome to hearing you out and helping you to make sure that you feel comfortable and safe. Because at the end of the day, that is our main job, to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and safe and provide a healthy environment.
All
Great.
right, so we have another question that is, what constitutes treating someone differently? How can you scale interactions to then make that deduction? So that really depends on you, and if you feel that you're being treated differently. That's entirely up to your discretion, and if you feel that there's a potential for you to make an EEO complaint. An example of being treated differently could be from, oh my goodness, excuse me. An example of being treated differently could be not being invited to staff outings, could be policies being unfairly applied to you and not the rest of your staff. Those are some examples of more obvious notions of being treated differently. Something that's maybe super duper less severe that maybe only you would notice it could be something as simple as not being told good morning when coming into the office. These are all different examples that hold different levels of severity. Again, if you feel that being treated differently is being based on you having a different identity or a specific identity or trait, that's when it becomes an EEO matter, and that's when you would utilize this avenue.
Thank you for that clarity, Xavier. Appreciate it. I don't see any more questions. Before we wrap up, I just want to thank you both again for the presentation. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for those who are here in attendance. If you have a colleague on the board or someone that wanted to attend but wasn't able to, just a reminder that we will be posting these on our website once we're done with our leadership training week. So please be on the lookout for that. And then just one last plug. Thank you, Porfirio, for putting it in the chat. Reminding everyone that all of these trainings are virtual except for 2 of them. And the one that will be coming up in person for us is going to be on Friday, November 17th. It's our emergency preparedness training. This is the one, as Trisha mentioned earlier, where folks will be able to not only learn about how to be better prepared for any type of natural disaster or concern, but working with our partner at the state on emergency services, they will be giving out and distributing emergency preparedness kits. So we really do encourage you to please sign up at the link in the chat right now. With that, I will just pass it over. Trisha, I don't know if you have any words that you'd like to add. Otherwise, be able to. Okay, great. Save your voice, please. So just thank you, everyone, again. I hope you all have a great night, and we'll see you for the next training. Take care, everyone.